Hello, and welcome back to the Wishing You Well podcast, where we help you navigate your wellness journey each and every week. I'm Amy Albero.
And I'm Catherine Van Eyck. We're both licensed therapists and love talking about all things wellness here on Wishing You Well. This week on Wishing You Well, we are talking about family during the holidays. What feelings come up, conflicts that may arise, and if these do come up for you, how can you manage it all so you can actually enjoy yourself over the holidays?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into this. I know this is a topic that comes up every year around this time of year in my sessions, in my life. So,
and we're hoping that it hasn't quite come up yet. Yeah. And maybe like we're getting a little head start.
Right. We want to be preventative.
Yeah. Proactive. So,
yes.
Living full and well life is put together, authentic.
We feel it.
Take care of ourselves.
But before we do that, of course, we need to check in. How are you? How are you doing? How's your self-care?
So I'll start by saying that I didn't know this about me maybe until I got pregnant, that like I don't like to ask for help. Like I like to do things the way I like to do things. And I don't, that's how it is. So when I was, in a dark hole for 12 weeks.
Also known as first trimester.
Yeah. We could call it that. I just I couldn't do what I would normally do. And I felt really terrible about it. And my husband kept saying to me, like, you need to just stop. Like, everything's fine. You're growing a human and I can do all these things. Like, this is all I can do as you do that. So let me do all these things. And so I wrapped my head around that and I was like, okay, this is nice. And like, he's right. I'm working a lot, even if I'm sitting on the couch. Mm-hmm. There are things happening. So then, second trimester comes around and I can just pick up and be me again. So I'm feeling good. Now third trimester comes around and I'm like tired again. I'm like out of breath. I just took a deep breath again. I'm out of breath when I talk for a long time. And I just need more rest and I need to not do everything again. And I don't like it.
It's hard.
It's really hard. And again, so yesterday my husband had to remind me again, like, you can sit on the couch. I can handle this. Oh, I don't know. I'm packing the groceries and starting dinner or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And we had a separate conversation maybe a week or two ago where he was like, you need to get more comfortable with asking for more things. Like, he's like, you don't even do that. Like, asking me to go get your water for you is not even anything. So like, you need to start asking for more. And I was like, it's so weird. I don't even know how to do that or what to do. And so I'm working on that. Mm-hmm. That's my self-care.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
It is a big one. Are you able to tolerate when your husband might help, but do things differently than you would do them?
I've learned to adapt. Mm-hmm. Although last night I was like, come into our room and I'll show you how I've been folding our baby's clothes that we have so we can put them away. And so, when you start doing these loads of laundry, as you will, you'll know how to fold them. You'll know the right way. So he starts doing it and I'm like, it's backwards. You're not doing it right. But maybe later.
Right.
Step two.
Yeah. Step one is getting comfortable. Yeah. Asking for help and letting people help you. Yeah. No, that's really important. Especially as you get into the fourth trimester, right?
Right. That'll be so different. Mm-hmm. Like having my mom around or having my mother-in-law around and letting them do what they want to do to help.
Yeah.
And thankfully they'll be there to help for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be weird.
Yeah. It's a good thing to practice.
Yeah. Let you know how that goes.
Yeah. Keep me posted.
Yeah. How about you?
I have a self-care treat, but it's like more than just a treat. It reminds me of like at a wedding, there's like Venetian hour, like a lot of desserts. Yeah, I know. Best part of a wedding besides cocktail hour. But so my husband and I celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary, and we had a nice trip planned for that. And that was wonderful. But this weekend coming up, we're doing like our more traditional anniversary trip, which is nice in and of itself and feels like a treat in and of itself to kind of go back to the town that we got married in and, do a lot of the things that we did around the time of our wedding. So that feels like, treat number one. And then treat number two is kind of like living into some of the traditions that we've built as we go there over the last 10 years. And so whether it's like going to familiar places or like even like having like special meals that feel like special to us and that are just like special because we're eating out. And then the third kind of treat is that we do a big hike every time that we're there. And it's always been fun. Like we're both a little competitive. So like we try to like beat our time every year.
They beat each other.
Oh, no. I mean, I always win. So it's like not even a competition.
Do you actually like, wait, what do you mean you always win?
I'm always pulling him along. I was like, come on, faster. Let's go. Enough rest. I'm very fun to be with.
Maybe you and I should go hiking together because I do the same thing where all of a sudden I just break out into a run for like maybe 30 yards or less. And I'm like, come on, let's go. I'm not the one carrying the backpack. I can do that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. My husband carries the backpack. Although I've offered, I can carry the backpack if it means we'll move faster. But, going on that hike is always like really fun. It's got great views. I every year try to like do a handstand or try to do a handstand some years. Like,
I think I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah. So it just like feels like a fun thing to do. I love challenging my body in like different ways. So I'm really excited for that. So yeah, so it's multiple treats, which feels cool.
Yeah. I mean, treats don't come around every day. And also multiple. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. And it's like a small little sleepy town. So like always feels good to like support like the little businesses there. So I'm excited.
I want to go there.
Yeah, it's cute. It's very cute. This is a reminder to all of our listeners to make sure that you are checking in on your self-care each week, just like us. And as you can see, every week it looks different. And I'm sure yours does too. So.
All right. Well, today, aside from self-care, now that we've checked in, we are talking about the holidays as they are approaching imminently.
Yes. And like, as cliche as this sounds, like not all holidays are happy for everyone, or not all holidays are all happy for everyone. And I know that we like just wanted to acknowledge that holidays, like, yeah, they can be fun and there's often traditions and, it can be a beautiful time of year. It also can be really stressful and filled with conflict and just discomfort and tension, stress.
And also grief and disappointment. Just depending on whatever your family situation is. And maybe your holidays weren't always like that, or maybe they were like that and now they are more joyful, but it can vary, and it can vary by year, and it can vary by holiday, depending on who you're seeing.
No, it's really true. And I think, we wanted to record this episode for this time of year because it feels like a marathon of like holidays even Halloween, starting from there, like through the new year. Like it just is for many families like this expected or forced family time, or maybe you're seeing your family or members of your family.
Or it is just, you're right, it's like on top of each other. It's like this holiday and this holiday and this holiday. Why does that happen? Why aren't these spaced out? Like,
I don't know. We could use a holiday in March. I'm just saying, like spread the wealth a little bit. Because it is a lot all at once. And not only are they like the actual dates, but like then there are gatherings and get-togethers and parties that also get sprinkled in during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot. It's a lot to manage and a lot to juggle. Just if there's no drama, like if there's no tension, it's just a lot to fit in. But add to it if there are like maybe challenges that are existing within you and your relationships or within the greater family as a whole, changes, transitions within your life or your family's life, all of that.
I'm thinking back to our summer Reactivity TV episode of The Bear.
Mm-hmm.
You and I talked so long about the Christmas episode because you had this family who otherwise, unless together, they're otherwise like functioning okay. And I will say okay because these things exist, but they're just not being addressed until everybody's thrown together.
Mm-hmm.
And then there you have it. Someone's driving a car through the wall.
Yeah.
If you have not watched that show, go watch that show and watch our reactions to it. It was great. But like that was a very realistic depiction of how some holidays can be for people and how like maybe you are flying in from out west to go east, and this is that time of year where all of a sudden all of those feelings that you have towards your uncle or towards your cousin that you have unresolved conflict with, like it's all put out there right on that dining room table for you.
Yes. Yeah. It is like a pressure cooker of sorts. And yeah, it can lead to like a big escalation. And whether that's again, an escalation, like in that episode of someone throwing a fork or, someone driving a car through a wall, or maybe it's like an internal build of tension that might lead to like you just feeling so like stressed, frustrated, angry, angsty because of just the buildup of who you might see and what that might be like.
I think what we're essentially saying is that this happens in adulthood for many, if not all of us, many of us. This is a very normal experience to have some sort of negative outlook or some sort, or hold on to some sort of tension that comes out during this time of year.
Right. And well, I guess just to like edit something that you just said, I think these are also probably things that happen in childhood and throughout your life. But when you're an adult, there's a little bit more of an element of choice, right? Like around what your holidays can look like. Like when you live with your parents or live with your family, like it just kind of like is what it is. And I'm going to go wherever my parents tell me I need to go. And like, so-and-so's coming over, whether I like it or not. Like there's kind of like this, you're a kid. So it just like is happening around you. And that is just what it is. But when you're an adult, I feel like in some ways, and we've talked about this in other episodes, like our adult children episode, like you might not even understand the dysfunction that exists until you are in that stage of adulthood, maybe have a different view or understanding of your family dynamics, your parents, who you are, like, and until that period. And then, yeah, it's all highlighted in front of you during the holidays.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you move up from the kids' table and all of a sudden you see everything. Like you might notice things as a kid and you might be unhappy with things as a kid, but often you're not really like in it and like experiencing it until you're that adult, until you're not like occupied with maybe the toys that you got that day and like the food that you were looking forward to eating. All of a sudden it's like, all right, yeah, I freaking love the way that pie gets made, but ooh, is it worth it that my aunt, I can't stand her, like, is the one that has to make it.
Yeah.
And she's there.
Right. It's so true. And I think with like entering into adulthood, for whatever reason, it opens the floodgate for, and maybe this happens a little bit in like later adolescence where like it's like the door is open for people to like ask you personal questions like where are you going to college, where are you working, are you seeing anyone, like how successful are you, if you're married, are you getting married, are you, when you're having kids, where do you live, like it just like opens the floodgates for people to ask you things about your life stage as well.
I think we talked about this on our boundaries episode. And I still don't know, like, how did this come to be that these are the questions that get asked? There's so many other, and I've talked about this with clients too, when we're talking about ways to manage this, but like, why aren't we talking about our interests? Or like, why aren't we talking about this other, like this cool place that I just traveled to? Or like, why is it about job, family, marriage, all of those things that like people don't always have figured out? And even when it's figured out, do we really want to talk about them?
Right.
Like when somebody asks you, honestly, how's your husband? How do you answer that? I never know. Yeah. Period. There's no conversation that can come from that. Like I get the sentiment, but like there's nothing that actually comes from that conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of like asking about you and asking about your I don't know, like
what have you been up to lately?
Sure.
You know, and anything. But I mean, my perhaps non-therapist opinion is I don't really think people even care. I think they ask these questions because they don't know what else to ask or they're trying to make conversation, which is like kind of interesting because it stresses us the fuck out so much.
Right. Somebody's just asking you a question because to ask you. Yeah. And like it is the question that you are dreading.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean,
or they don't care. And the reason they're asking is because they want to push their own agendas on you. Yeah. So if you are somebody that doesn't ever want to get married and somebody's asking you, when are you and so-and-so getting married? Like you've been living together for 6 years now. What's going on? Like, why haven't they popped the question yet? Yeah. If that's your relationship and that's not in your future, they don't care about that. They're just asking because they want you to know that they think that this is really important.
Right.
And they don't understand you and they don't actually care to understand you. They just want you to know that they don't like what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Right. And that, I mean, and we're highlighting like even one sliver of like the holidays that get stressful is that like we get these like uninvited questions, but conflict and tension can arise at the holidays. Like, and you started to allude to this before, like, where are you spending them? Who are you spending them with? How long are you staying there? Like those, like the logistics, I guess is what I'm saying, like tends to be a huge source of conflict, particularly when, for example, maybe you are in a serious relationship with someone else. And that might mean that you're spending part of the holidays with your significant other's family and part of the holidays with yours, kind of like a change to a quote unquote tradition or routine that tends to kick up a lot of conflict, maybe between the couple, maybe between the families of origin. A switch up like that tends to not go over like super easily and super smoothly from personal experience and also just anecdotal experience and working with many, many people in similar life stage.
Right. People like tradition. People like things to stay the same. And similar to what I was saying before, they aren't always interested in maybe what's best for you, but what benefits them. And what benefits them is to keep everyone together and to keep things the same. And you shaking that up isn't doing them any favors.
Yeah. I mean, how have you kind of like noticed conflict, whether it's just like in lives of people you know, in your own life? Like what does that tend to look like?
Well, I'd say that like kind of like I was saying before, with any of these things that come up around the holidays, these are things that are present year round, and they just happen to make themselves known a little bit more at the holidays, because they're tied up with a nice, pretty bow. And so, one way I've experienced that, certainly with like my own family, is time, the time that somebody might be attending something. And if a couple of my family members are somewhere else for too long, or they stay somewhere for not long enough, then you're getting talked about.
Yeah.
We're talking about how that's not okay. We're upset by it. We don't get it. You're not treating us the same as you treat them. So yeah, that's definitely come up as a similar
conversations have been had by me, and probably about me as well, I'm sure. But yeah, that I think is hard. And it's kind of like, it's reminding me of that scene. I don't know how familiar you are or your memory is with the movie Knocked Up. I don't remember their character names, but Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann like are obviously like they fight all the time, and she's basically saying like, I just want to spend time with you, like I love you, and they're like yelling at one another, and that's kind of like what this holiday stuff reminds me of. Like ultimately, like that's what I think a lot of like families are saying, like I just want to spend time with you, and it's really pissing me off that I have to share my time with someone else, or that maybe you don't want to spend as much time, or it feels like you're choosing to spend time with someone else. Like there's like a level of hurt or rejection or grief that comes up with that kind of stuff. And for me, that's been like a tough thing to navigate through my relationship, especially my in-laws don't live locally. And so that's meant a big overhaul to how my family and my husband's family experience the holidays, and what that's meant for traditions, what we're included on, what we miss out on. And that, I think, for me, has come with its own sense of grief. And every other Christmas I spend with my family, and then we do like kind of a second Christmas with my family anyway on the off Christmases, and the Christmases that I'm not with my family, like I definitely wake up and I'm like, oh, and even I'm not a child. I don't wake up at my parents' house and run down to the Christmas tree and open presents from Santa. Like
you don't?
I don't. And so it's like, I don't really know what I'm like missing out on, or think I'm missing out on. But like, I think it's the grief or the loss of tradition, or just what was comfortable, or what is maybe simpler, easier. And I think that like wanting to hold on to that is what can create conflict or create tension as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think you bring up another good example of a conflict, an internal conflict that maybe isn't one that everyone's talking about, or everyone's like getting, or like you might not actually be like getting on anyone's nerves, or like people aren't getting on your nerves, but like you as an adult experiencing these holidays, it just looks a lot different than it used to. And sometimes that in itself is makes it a lot harder to face. And like I know, for instance, for my family, it was like, as soon as my grandma died, and not everybody was like, or like, she wasn't like bringing everybody together. And also it was like, all of my cousins had already grown up and started their families. So like things started to split up.
Yeah.
That was the time that things really shifted. And so now these new traditions get put into place, and these new ideas of like what it means to celebrate whatever holiday it is together gets put in place. And you're just like, ooh, this is uncomfy. This is weird. This isn't how I'm used to it. So even just with that, like that internal feeling of grief, that internal feeling of loss, like if you're somebody that did have these like really amazing big family gatherings as a kid, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, ooh, we don't have those anymore. That's new. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so true. I'm thinking about, there was one year that we had 2 huge losses in our family back to back, like right around the holidays. And they were individuals who, were the kind of like the glue of like bringing extended family together, like all the cousins and whatnot. And I think there is an element of like wanting to hold on to that, like wanting to bring it all back together. And then the reality of like families have grown, like families have moved on, like it just like simply can't be that way anymore. And it does come with a sense of loss. And if I'm to be the most empathic I can possibly be to like the parent that is putting pressure on their adult kid to like spend all the holidays with them or giving them a hard time, it's like, no, I get it. Like you just want to, hang on, like to stay close, to stay connected, to keep things as they were, maybe in a simpler time. Like that's like my most empathic view on it, which makes me feel a little bit guilty for how annoying it feels. But no, I mean, I think that's where a lot of it comes from. The delivery in that isn't always great. It can feel like, so like, as we've been saying, like it can feel like so much pressure. I think that's a big source of conflict that I experience, is like the guilt and the pressure and the around like where it's being spent. But then there's also, in terms of pressure and stress, like there's also like, not necessarily in my family, but I know in other families, like around like gifts, buying gifts, how much we're spending, who we're buying gifts for, who we're not buying gifts for, like what do people expect? Like there's so many expectations that go into the holidays, particularly around like the exchange of goods.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was just going to say like gifts. Let's talk about gifts. I mean, not all of the holidays during this time are about gift giving or gift receiving. And maybe, it's not about that, but it's included in some of them. And even just the financial stress that can come along with that. I mean, if there are certain expectations of who's supposed to get what, who's usually getting something, and then, so-and-so doesn't have a job anymore, but they also don't necessarily want to use that, not to say like using it, but like make that a conflict, make that a reason to stray from the quote unquote norm of the family. And that's so much stress built up for somebody whose financial situation has just totally changed. Or maybe one sibling has a shit ton of money and one doesn't. And yet the expectation is still the same.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's so true. It's really tough. Or even just this is where I think it is where my family gets in the mix, is like the pressure to get like like a perfect gift, or to get something that I know that someone will absolutely like. Like my mom will drive herself nuts. She's very thoughtful, similar to me. I think one of her love languages of giving love is gift giving. And so like she will drive herself nuts thinking about gifts to get like our third cousin's kids, and it's just like, whoa, like it's the thought that counts. Like, don't overthink it. Like, don't overdo it. Like you're creating all this stress that you don't need to. I think that's another element of the gift giving aspect of things.
I wanted to say that my husband and I have already talked about like what we want holidays to look like with, you know, our new baby. But, you know, when we have more kids eventually, that like we want everyone else to take care of it. That like, okay, there are grandparents that want to spoil you. We will not be doing it. We'll see what happens. But this is what we've discussed together around gifts. And I think it just kind of leads to like the conversation around it. Like my brothers and I had a conversation, I think a year or two ago. And I don't even know if it was much of a conversation, but I think I was like, I'm not buying you guys gifts anymore. My oldest brother has 2 kids. I was like, I'm giving your kids gifts, but like, you guys are done. We're old now.
Yeah.
Like that's not happening.
I need to have that conversation with my brother and sister-in-law this year too. Similarly, like just gonna spoil the heck out of my nephew, but like, do we really need to do this?
Yeah.
We're good.
Well, and I think, that was for birthdays. And then for Christmases, we switched to doing a Secret Santa thing. So you're only buying one.
I like that.
And it's kind of fun because you just get assigned one person.
Yeah.
So you can do what your mom's doing and just like hone in on it. And you pick a budget that works for everybody. So that is a nice, that's been a nice solution.
Yeah, I like that. We tried to do that one year. And again, I think my brother and sister-in-law really enjoy giving gifts. And so we were going to do Secret Santa, and then they ended up buying gifts for everybody. And so I was like, damn it, we weren't supposed to do that. But it's really tough. And I think I like what you're saying about like how you and your husband have like already begun talking about this, like have already begun thinking about what holidays will look like, what traditions you will have as you grow your family. And I imagine you had similar conversations like before, like when you guys were getting serious and all of that stuff around like what holidays ideally would look like and all of that stuff. I know you're both like very family oriented. And so like, I imagine that had to be a conversation. And similar to my husband and I, like it's just had to be like a conversation. It's some like a little bit of trial and error through the years. And one thing that kind of arose through COVID was that, well, let me back up and say in regard to Christmas, I really like Christmas. Probably a favorite holiday. And again, it's not unique. I just, I really like Christmas. And typically on the years that we go to my in-laws for Christmas, we would stay at their house. And I, in my people pleasing self and my anxious self, and like, again, being away from home, like it just didn't feel like as comfortable for me to wake up in a guest room and like tiptoe around and like get my coffee. And like, I wanted to have like some private Christmas moment, like exchanging gifts with my husband. Like I just had a different idea of what that could be. And it wasn't really working out like in the way that I had wanted it to initially. It was just like uncomfy. It happened. And my in-laws were great and wonderful and all of that stuff. And they would hate to know that I tiptoed around and whatever. But when COVID happened, we ended up staying at a hotel down the road from my in-laws' house. And so we kind of developed a new tradition that will, go over on Christmas Eve night, like head up there Christmas Eve night, spend some time with them, go to a hotel, have some space to do our own thing, and then go back the next day. And that was a really tricky shift to make. That did not go over well initially, but now it's kind of like the new tradition. And a lot of it came through conversations that my husband and I had around like, this is what's making Christmas feel stressful for me. And he was telling me the same thing. This is what I think will make Christmas stressful for your parents. How can we like kind of meet in the middle? But it has to be a conversation, especially if the conflict that you're experiencing is related to like in-laws.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it might be something that you need to keep readdressing in like different ways. I mean, that came up out of the pandemic, but had it not, you probably still needed to have that conversation at some point. You just didn't even know it was an option. You didn't even think about it.
Right.
And then when it became the only option, then you're like, I like this. This is so much better. But these things just constantly need to get reevaluated.
Right.
Maybe not every year or every single holiday in the next few months, but like periodically.
Right. But I think one thing that we're both talking about as I'm thinking about the conversation you and your husband were having around gifts, and your conversation with your brothers, similar around gift giving and whatnot, and what I'm saying about staying at a hotel, like it does involve a discussion around boundaries. And like, I think that like, that's probably one of the main ways to deal with family stress and family conflict, family drama, is to get a good sense of what your boundaries are and know that they might piss some people off, like it wasn't an immediate home run when we had told my in-laws that we're gonna stay in a hotel Christmas Eve. That wasn't like clapped for, and it's fine, but it was like initially really uncomfortable. And I'm sure they had all sorts of feelings about it. And so I think that there has to be an element of like really getting clear with yourself, and with your partner, if they're involved in whatever's going on, that you have an idea of like what your needs are, what your wants are. Maybe you have to make a compromise, but then setting a boundary and kind of sticking to it.
What do you think about, I mean, yeah, we are definitely stressing it if you are in a relationship, having that conversation with them. And you did just say like, if they're involved, like if you are also single or you're dating, you can still set up these boundaries. I mean,
Of course.
it's still so important. You don't have to wait to be in a relationship to almost like use that as an excuse to make a change for yourself. That can happen whenever you are ready.
Yeah.
And maybe even before you're ready.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, that's so true. And it's like, what a good practice to put in like early on. Right. And I am so glad that you brought that up because, both of us being in relationships, that's kind of like where our personal experience stems from. But you're right. Like, I do think that there is an element of like, well, I don't necessarily have anywhere else to go or an excuse or a reason to maybe limit my time at a particular gathering or say no to something or whatever, because I don't have like a good enough reason. But the reason is, if the reason is that you are uncomfortable or like that it's really too stressful or that it's like taking away from your peace and well-being, like that's a reason.
Yeah. I mean, or even if it's not about whether to not go to something or how long to stay at something, which those are ways to put up boundaries. Maybe it's about what kind of conversations you're okay with having with people and what kind of questions you're okay with answering, but just also taking it upon yourself to advocate for yourself and tell people what you're okay and not okay with.
Yeah. I'm thinking about someone I know who is not in a relationship, single, and she's the only one in her family who is. She has siblings that have a bunch of kids and whatnot. And when they get together for the holidays, there's this assumption that auntie, so-and-so is going to swoop in and like kind of babysit the kids kind of thing. And that is like the big source of like almost resentment at this point of like, God, it feels like they just like drop their kids off at daycare and I'm expected to like deal with it. And so we've been kind of navigating that, but like, that's another element of like, sometimes there is this assumption that because you are not in a relationship or you don't have kids that like, you're just like free to do all the things, whether it's like in cleaning up, in whatever, preparing things for the holiday, like just, you're single, so you're available and all of that stuff. And so like fight against that if that's like what you're experiencing too.
Yeah. I totally felt that way when my family dog was still around, which like Ollie, RIP, miss you. However, I got put into the role of like, well, Catherine's going to take care of Ollie while everyone else is doing whatever they want. Like, oh, he needs to go out. That's me. He needs to get fed. That's me. Well, you can't be over there. That's me. Like, you just, that happens in every family. You get just like put into a role, and her family, your friend's family, like might not even be aware of it. And if they are aware of it, they might actually be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like,
Didn't realize. I thought you enjoyed this.
yeah. I thought that this was like your time with them and that like you wanted this. I didn't know that it was like this thing that you, you know, were really not looking forward to. So it's another thing to bring up.
Yeah. I mean, and even within my family, I don't have children. My brother does. And it seems like there's this assumption that because I don't, I can be so accommodating to like, and I can't. It's not to say that I can't, but like, or I can't be more accommodating than he can, for example. But I had because I was getting like pretty annoyed. Like, you're making plans based on like his schedule, and like you're not, and just assuming that I'll like be able to like be at X, Y, and Z place. Like, no, like you have to ask me first. Like, I might not have a child or a family in the way that you understand it to be, but like that doesn't mean I have other responsibilities or like I have other things to do. I can't just like drop everything. And I think they were like, oh, like you're just so easygoing about it. I just thought it doesn't matter. And I think I was being like very flexible and all of that stuff. Like it happens. It's really tough.
All of this is. Holidays can be really tough. These conversations can be really tough. Setting up boundaries. Yeah. All the above.
All the above. And I think a good thing to really consider as we approach the holidays and you know, people think about how to navigate that is like to really pay attention to like the feelings that do come up, like knowing like we're in or around that time of year. Like, how are you feeling right now? Like when you think about, I don't know, Thanksgiving, or you think about, I don't know, Hanukkah, or you think about Christmas, like what feelings are coming up there? Is it stress? Is it frustration? Is it resentment? To really try to use this time. Again, we are dropping this episode really strategically, to really use this time to be reflective about how you're feeling, what your stress level is, and use your feelings as information as a way to help set you up for success here, emotional success, your well-being up for success.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Enjoy.
I was just thinking of the guy in Mean Girls.
Oh, yeah. So remember, check in with your feelings, think about boundaries, and stick to them. Like, stick to your boundaries. If you start this year, next year will be easier. So
if you start with the first holiday, the next one will get easier.
So true. Yeah. Do it now. Do it today. Well, we hope this helped as part of your holiday prep. Let us know if you have specific questions about how to navigate something going on in your family or the holidays or really anything. You can always reach out to us with an email, wishingyouvell@revivecfw.com. So don't forget about that. We love answering your listener questions. But thank you. Thanks for following along, for your ratings, reviews, for following us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. If you're not, we'd love for you to join us here. Not only do we have full length episodes of our podcast, but we also have other great wellness content, and we have a bonus podcast that we drop weekly exclusively on YouTube. If you love TV and movies, we've got you. We give our therapist takes and perspectives on Reactivity TV. So go check that out. You can also follow us on Instagram at ReviveCFW. You can follow Catherine at Catherine Van Eyck, me at Amy Alvaro LCSW. Again, email us, wishingyouvell@revivecfw.com. Check out our website, revivecfw.com. Until next time, we are wishing you well.